Hi everyone, it's Matt Moran and it's Teaching Tuesday. Today we're going to cover why and how to use a MIDI drum track as your click track when you're recording your songs. And I'll give you the real brief on why I do this. Recording to a click, just the blip, 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 lacks any real feeling. And it doesn't usually, it has a hard time kind of capturing the nuances of what you're really playing. It's far better to play with a drummer, for instance. You're going to get kind of 8th notes, 16th notes, little hits. And if you use a MIDI drum track, you can do a lot of those elements in there. And even just adding 8th notes makes things a lot better. It gives you a much more natural feel. So I'm going to show you an example. We're going to look at Reaper and jump right into it. Also, make sure you check the links. I'm going to have, or check the description. I'll have links to the MIDI drum kit I use, and you can download it. It's totally free. We'll get to that in just a minute. But let's jump in and take a look at Reaper, and let's look at why you want to use a drum track, a MIDI drum track, rather than a click track. So let's go right to Reaper. So the first thing we've got here is I've just got a track here. It's not even armed to record. We're not going to do any recording here. I've already got some stuff recorded, but I just want to show you. I've put it on repeat, and I've turned on the metronome, and you just want to hear what it sounds like. So this is what you would be recording to if you're recording to a click track. All right. So that's it. It's literally just a beat on, every quarter note. Just blip, blip, blip. And you can make some changes to it in the metronome. If you right mouse click on the metronome, you can do some things in here to change it. But the reality is, at best, it's a poor replacement for drums, right? For actual percussion and feeling and tempo and rhythm, all those things that you want to get. And so I'm going to just show you on this other track what you could have. So this is a track where I've actually recorded some things. We'll get to that in a second. But we're just going to take this one measure right here that I've highlighted, and I'm going to put it on repeat. It's already on repeat. I'm going to solo this track, and let's just hear what you could be recording to. Right, so you get the actual feel of 8th notes, with that hi-hat, right? You get the actual feel of the 8th note. So that can be really helpful. Also, we're doing a bass snare, pretty standard. And remember, this is all done for 4/4. If you're doing 3/4, it would be different, but the same rules kind of apply, right? So you've got a bass drum snare, and that's pretty unimaginative, but even that alone, for recording most songs that are in 4/4, is going to be a lot more natural as you're playing the song, okay? So I'm going to show you what we're using, the tools that we're using, and how to get them, okay? So the first thing you want to do is you want to go to powerdrumkit.com. So the kit I'm using is called MT Power Drumkit 2. And it's really a powerful, full-featured, virtual drum kit that you could use in projects beyond using it as a scratch track. I'm going to show you some of the things you can do with it. We're not going to go into it in detail, but I want to show you how you get it set up. So the first thing you want to do is you need to download it. It's totally free, which makes it really cool. I use Windows, but you have Mac or Linux. And so if we go to Windows, I'm going to get the VST. And when you go to download that, I get the 64-bit VST. Okay, so you want to download the actual drum kit. That's the first part. The next thing you want to download, and this is particularly true in Reaper, but in other software as well, under presets, the drum map. And this is the mapping for the MIDI notes so that you can see what drum applies to what note. It's really helpful when you're using a keyboard controller, which we'll have some video in the future about, and you're actually doing the beats on that MIDI keyboard, for instance. So knowing the keys, where they go and where they fall on the keyboard is super helpful. So right here, you can download the note names for Reaper, and that's going to download a zip file that you're going to expand on your hard drive. So once that's done, what you want to do, let's bring this up into the window. So once you've downloaded them, Here's the zip file of the drum kit. I downloaded it yesterday. And then this is the MIDI notes, which I downloaded this morning. And then I've expanded it here. You'll expand both of those so you can get to the files inside. And here's all you need. So you go to the drum kit, and what you want to do is go into this folder and you want to grab this DLL and this content pack, which has grooves and other information for the drum kit. So the DLL and this. And you want to copy that into your VST folder. Now what I do in Reaper in particular, what I do just to organize things is I create a folder I create something called data on my root, music, and inside here I have a whole bunch of stuff, but then I have a folder called VSTs, and this is where I put a bunch of my third-party VSTs because it's just easy for me to find and manage. And then what I do is I map this ultimately to, excuse me, sorry, I'll have to edit that out. What I do is I end up mapping this in Reaper, and I'll show you where you do that. So first I go in here and I add the note, I just drop it in, and you can see it right here, MT Power Drumkit and the content pack. So it's in my VST folder. And if we go to Reaper, under Options, Preferences, and under VST, so when you come into it, you'll probably be under General, but you scroll down here and get to VSTs. Right here is your path of all your VST folders. You just edit the path list, and I've added that one in here. So you would just add a path, and you just grab that path and add it into Reaper. So I put all my VSTs in the folder just so I can organize them easily, find them, and see what I have there. So once you do that, that's going to make the MT Power Drumkit available. But the next thing you want to do is you want to go back to the note names that you downloaded, which is right here, and it's just a text file. And you want to copy that into the MIDI note names folder, which is going to be in your Reaper folder. Now, I install Reaper as a portable download, or as a portable install, so I have a Reaper folder, and all my information is beneath that folder. But you might have to look in Program Files Reaper if you've done just a standard install. So I do the portable install just to make it easy for me to move my install if I needed to another computer with all my settings. So under MIDI note names, I copied that drum mapping text file in here. So I'm going to show you how to use that. But either way, that's going to get you set up to be able to use MT Power Drumkit. Now let's look at a new track and let's add MT Power Drumkit to it. And I'll show you what I do. So what I do is I actually have two tracks for my MIDI drums. The first one is an 8-count lead-in. I want to have 2 measures of beats that are going to lead me in before I start the song. And I do that for a few reasons, because when I send the file off to somebody with stems, let's say I'm going to have them record parts for me, I do some collaboration, I send it to them with that 8-count lead-in, but I drop off the rest of the MIDI drums because I want them to be able to bring that into their recording software, and they just set the beats per minute and they can record to a click or however they like to do it. Now I'll send them a drum file if they want that as a separate track just because it makes things easy. But this is what I do. So the first thing I want to do is an 8-count lead-in. So we're going to create a track, and the first thing we're going to do is click on Effects. I'm going to look for MT. Here's our Power Drum Kit. So now it brings in this, which is a pretty cool interface, and if we click on any of these, right? So we can hear the various drums that are in our kit. First thing I'm going to do is take one measure. I'm going to highlight it, then I'm going to say Insert New MIDI Item. And now I'm going to go into that MIDI item. And notice, this is where the key mapping file is going to come in handy. So it shows us everything here. It shows us we can be in piano roll view or just name notes. But we can't see which notes belong to which drum kit. Now I know that 36 is the bass drum, and I know that this is the snare. However, you don't want to have to remember that. So this is where we go up to the MIDI editor and we go to File, Note Names, and we say load note from file. So we choose file. It brings us to our MIDI note names folder. We select the MT Power Drumkit. Now we have all the drums listed here, and they also show up in piano roll. That shows you what keys you would hit on a keyboard controller to get to those particular drums. So you always want to either create or find a downloadable MIDI note file, so that you can know, it doesn't matter whether you're using the Labs percussion, there's a MIDI note file for that, or some other drum editor, some other virtual drum instrument, you're going to want to get those MIDI note names. So now I know that this is a kick drum. Here's my snare. I can do a stick, side stick. Here's my hi-hats, various flavors, everything, right? All right. So this is what we're going to do. All I want leading into this is 4 bass drums. So we're looking at 16th notes, so we're just going to double click right there, right there, right there, and right there. Now that's going to give us 4 counts coming into it. We'll just do a repeat on that so we can hear it. All right. So once we've done that, all I have to do is drag it out. It just repeats the same pattern. That's what happens with your MIDI, with your MIDI editor. It just repeats the exact setup we did in the first measure over and over. I could continue to drag it out, but we only need it for 8 beats. That's going to be our count in. Now what I'm going to do is do my next track, and I'll name this SCR for scratch, 8 count lead in. And the reason I do that also is so that I can have this active even when I mute the other part of it. I could mute items, but I don't want to have to do that. So now I'm going to create another measure of drums, and I'm going to insert that MIDI item on a new track, and we're just going to call this scratch beat. So what we're going to do is we're going to insert a new MIDI item. Once again, I've gone in there. The note names are not there because I haven't added them. I'm going to show you how you can save those and kind of recall the same thing over and over again. But first, let's just go here and load the note names. It's listed right there. And now we can do what we want to do as kind of a standard beat. So let's start with the most simple 4/4 beat that we can do. We're just going to do zoom out a little bit. We're going to do a kick snare, okay? So all I'm going to do is on the 1 and the 3, I'm going to put my kick. And then on a 2 and 4, we're putting a snare. Now this is the sound we're going to get. Oh, hold on a second. That was fancy. We didn't add the drum kit. All right, now I've added the drum kit to the effects. Even that is easier to record to than just a blip, 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 in my opinion. But now we're going to really add something to it that makes it a lot simpler for us, and we're just going to take a closed hi-hat, and we're just going to do 8th notes. You could do 16th notes, whatever you really want, but that goes here. Sorry. Nope. All right. There. Okay, so now when we listen to it, this is what we're going to get. Now I was recording something at 104 beats per minute, so I'm going to change my beats per minute. Down the right-hand corner of the Reaper screen, you have the beats per minute. You can just type in 104. And what it does is it automatically adjusts these MIDI items. So now if we listen to this again. All right, so now we're starting to get a little more feel, and you can continue to expand this, your comfort level with drums and percussion, and once again, it doesn't have to be this kit, but it's a free one that's pretty effective. But let's just add one more element, or 2 more elements. Let's take a kick drum and add it right there, and let's take this hi-hat and move it to an open hi-hat. So we can just drag it up. There it is on the open hi-hat. Oops, right there. And now let's hear what that sounds like. So now you hear that double bass drum, right? Boom, boom, right? You're getting that kind of feel. So you're getting bump, 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 bump on the bass drum. That can be super helpful. So now once we have that set up, all I need to do is back out here and I can just drag this for how long I need it for recording. Now, I don't worry about it ending at the end of my song, not for my scratch track, because that's just my sonic map, remember. It's a scratch track. Because later I can adjust it, and you'll want to adjust it so that when it ends, you have the drums ending so you don't hear, as you maybe let a guitar sustain, you're not going to hear the beat in the background. But either way, I can extend this out. If I take back up here and I can go to 6 minutes, doesn't really matter. So now I've extended that out, and here's what we're going to get to record to. Going to back up, zoom in a little bit. We're going to get an 8-count lead in, then the beat's going to start. I'm going to turn off repeat so it doesn't loop right here. And I can just get rid of that selection. So let's hear what we would hear if we were recording. Right, so now we can record to something that has a little more feel to it, gives us a little more vibe. And once again, we can keep adjusting this. And the cool thing is, we don't have to recreate this every time and add the note names. I do a couple things. I have actually a track template, which once again, we'll get to that in some future lesson. But we can also take this track, for instance, and I can actually name this. Oops, let's not start it. I can highlight both tracks. I can right mouse click, and I can say, save track as track template. Now I've got a bunch of them here, but let's just call this underscore MIDI drum click lesson. Okay, it's not what I would name it, but give it a name here. So now let's assume we have a brand new project. If I say a new project tab, here's my new project. If I right mouse click over here in the track area, I can say insert track from template. There's my MIDI drum click lesson. Oh, you know what? I did something incorrect there. I'm going to have to show you. You'll see the mistake. No drum showed up. This is what I did incorrect. So let's kill those. Let's remove those. I'm letting you see the mistake. I don't know if I'll edit this out. Let's highlight these both again. Let's do save tracks as track template. Go down here, include track items. That's what I forgot to do. We'll click on the same name. Okay. Now we said include the track items. That was my mistake. So when I come here, I'm going to say insert from template. Takes a moment, comes in, and also it retained all of our note names because they were already there. They're part of the track template. So that's really helpful. And if you want to adjust it but keep these intact, you can always go to a track and just right mouse click, choose duplicate track, mute this track, and then we can go here and make any adjustments we want. We don't want to have this here, or we want to have that to just go straight through, but we want to have a, I don't know why, but we put a high tom right there, okay? And now what we would get would be this. And once again, the beats per minute is at 120, so we're going to put it at 104. So you can play with that and really get whatever beat is going to work for you to record your song. Now, I have an example here where I've recorded a scratch track. I'm going to show you one other thing I do. We're not going to listen to the whole thing. It's just my version of The Tide that I actually put out yesterday as an acoustic track. But I want to show you one thing that may come up from time to time. okay? And this is where in the song, if you have a spot where you just hold a note, you hit a chord and you extend it out. What you don't want to do is those high frequencies, the hi-hats and the snares can often bleed through your headphones and get picked up on the sound. And you might, when you're recording or isolating that guitar recording or whatever it was you're recording to, you might hear those bleed through. And so there's a simple way that I use to avoid that. So I'm going to go to a section of my track that I know I do that, and it's in the chorus. Let me hear what it sounds like. The rolling tide, my heart is like the and chasing me. Here it is. Back to me. Oh, moon, bring the tide back to me. Right there. So we zoom in, right here, I'm going to hit the chord, and it's just going to extend out. So let's just hear it solo. Oh, moon, bring the tide back to me. So what I don't want is in that silence, or as the guitar fades out, I don't want to hear any of the click come through, right? Any of our scratch or our drum track. So what I'll do is I will highlight that little measure. In this case, it's one whole measure. And this is a cool feature of Reaper. I'll do Shift S, which will cut that piece left and right. And now I can edit this in isolation. So I'll double click on that. I will right mouse click, drag along the hi-hat to select them, get rid of those. I'll drag the snare down to a bass drum. And then I'll actually highlight them all again using Control A, and I'll lower the volume a little bit. Now what that's going to do for me is it's just going to give me a subtle bass drum in the background, but because it's a lower register, I can hear it, but it's unlikely to get picked up by your microphone and won't make it into any as a remnant or an artifact in your recording. So this is what it would end up sounding like. Praying that a full moon bring the tide back to me. Bring the tide back. Oh, I looped it. Sorry. Praying that a full moon bring the tide back to me. So that gives you can still hear it. You can make sure you hit your entry point on the next measure appropriately without having to just count it in your head and do it by feel, which is fine. You could do that, but this kind of ensures you'll hear that subtle kind of lower bass beat still rolling through that allows you to hit the next note. So this is how you set up MT Power Drummer as your MIDI drum track. You can do it with really any drum editor. I just use this one because it's free, it's available, it works great, and there's some other things you can do with it, and this is the last thing I'll really show you. One of the things that MT Drummer has is a bunch of preset beats. So if we wanted to, I could mute both of these tracks, and let's just say we wanted to add another track. We can go to MT Drummer, add it to the track as an effect, and then you've got all these grooves, and there's a lot of them, and you can use these as starting points too. So 8th closed hi-hat, look at all these grooves just of that. You can decide how many bars you want to do. Let's just say we do 2 bars, but let's just hear what it sounds like. I can click on this. Pretty basic. Okay, it always starts with that little snare. Sometimes I'll take that out. Or not snare, sorry, crash, but so there's a lot of options here. We can go down here and check this one out. So you might find one of these without building your own rhythm meets what you want to do. So what you can do is once you have that selected, you can just drag that right into your software. Now it's there, and remember, in the same fashion, if we drag it out, we have that beat as long as we want it. So now we will have the 8-count lead in and this drum beat, right? So let's go back to the start. So between building your own beat and ultimately using MT Drummer's built-in grooves, which there are many of them, you're probably going to find some rhythms, some tempos, or some rhythms and feels, some kind of nuances that work with what you're recording. And so that's another reason that it's a great tool for creating a click track too. So hopefully you found that helpful. If you did, please click like, consider subscribing, all the stuff you could do. Leave a comment, that would be awesome. Let other people know that want to record themselves or learn how to do that. And we'll be back next Tuesday with another lesson. I appreciate it. Thanks.
Oh, no, 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 no. 4 years to the day